In 1962, a decision was made about a place in the Grand Canyon, a place known as Cave 17. This decision, handed down by the National Park Service, was never reviewed, never reversed, and most strangely, never publicly explained. There was no hearing, no final report, no official closure announcement. Now, on its own, that might not seem too unusual for a massive government agency. But this decision did something extraordinary. It quietly erased an entire location from ranger operations without ever recording a clear reason why. For decades leading up to this, Cave 17 was completely routine. It was logged in official records, regularly patrolled by rangers. It had been mapped, and it was even included in ranger manuals and internal navigation charts. Nothing about its files suggested any unusual danger, instability, or a need for restricted access. It was just another part of the park's vast landscape. Then, something changed. In the early months of 1962, the language used in internal ranger briefings began to shift. It wasn't a dramatic overnight change, not enough to raise alarms at first, but it was a careful, deliberate pivot. Instead of describing Cave 17 as accessible, reports started using new words: non-essential, inactive, and eventually administratively restricted. What's missing is the why. No incident was ever listed. No rockfall or collapse was recorded. No accident was reported. There was just a decision handed down from an unknown source. Rangers who were assigned to that area later recalled being instructed to stop referencing the cave in their daily logs. When they asked why, their supervisors offered no explanation. The only answer they got was that the decision came from above and would not be discussed further. This is where the story gets really strange. For anyone familiar with how the National Park Service operates, a decision of this scale, effectively removing a known location from the map, normally trigger a whole series of bureaucratic processes. There should have been review cycles, safety committees, follow-up inspections, and updated documentation explaining the closure. But for Cave 17, none of that ever happened. It was simply removed from patrol routes without any replacement language. Training materials for new rangers were updated to quietly omit it. Internal correspondence that referenced the site just stopped abruptly and completely. It was a digital ghost before the digital age. One particular ranger memo from the middle of 1962 stands out, not for what it says, but for what it doesn't. It doesn't describe danger or risk. It doesn't mention safety concerns. It simply states that continued discussion of the site was no longer productive. That exact phrase appears nowhere else in Park Service records from that entire era. It's a bureaucratic dead end, a sentence designed to stop conversation. Former rangers who served in the region during that time have described their feeling as one of confusion, not fear. They weren't told the cave was unsafe. They were never told it was strictly off limits. They were just told that a decision had been made and that the matter was closed to review. Over time, as new staff came in, they were never even told that Cave 17 existed at all. It was history erased. Decades later, a partial archive transfer of old records revealed something even stranger. Several internal forms related to Cave 17 were never finalized. You know how government forms work. They need signatures, dates, and approvals. But on these documents, the signature lines were left blank. Review dates were missing. The sections for final determinations were empty. In most bureaucratic systems, unfinished paperwork usually signals a simple oversight, someone forgetting to sign a form. But here, every single unfinished document pointed in the same direction. Silence by design. It was a deliberate choice not to complete the record. One of these fragmented documents refers to conditions incompatible with continued evaluation. What does that even mean? Another mentions persistent irregularities, not suitable for public interpretation. Again, these phrases were never clarified, and no follow-up report exists to explain them. They are tantalizing clues that lead nowhere. By the late 1960s, Cave 17 wasn't even considered closed anymore. It had become irrelevant. It was as if the powers that be decided the safest option was not to deny its existence, but to simply let it fade from memory. And that, in my opinion, might be the most unsettling part of this entire story. Think about it. The Park Service didn't issue warnings. They didn't install barriers or gates. They didn't even put up a sign. They just stopped talking about it. They stopped reviewing it. They let it disappear. Today, if you look at any public map of the Grand Canyon, Cave 17 does not appear. There are no plaques, no signs, no historical markers, just an absence where a documented location once existed. It has been wiped from the official reality of the park. Even now, former rangers who acknowledge its existence still use the same careful words when speaking privately. They'll tell you there was a decision, and after that, we were told to stop asking questions. Whatever prompted that mysterious order in 1962 was never resolved. It was never corrected, and officially, it was never reviewed. Some places in our world are closed for safety. Others are restricted for preservation. But it seems some places, like Cave 17, are erased from the map because no explanation would ever be enough. Thanks for watching. If you find stories like this as fascinating as I do, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't want to miss our next deep dive into the unknowns. See you next time.